Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's discipline-focused webinar for public health on the topic of evaluations. Our presenters for today is Shibata Fuge, who is one of our senior product managers here at Exxat, and we also do have one of our other Exxat team members here, Vishaka Babe, as well. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please add your questions in the questions box. We will be pausing periodically to ensure your questions are answered. As usual, feel free to download today's presentation to follow along or keep as a reference. You can find that in the handout section. This webinar will be recorded and shared with you via email 1 hour after the webinar ends and will also be made available on our YouTube channel. And we're going to give folks just a couple of minutes to let everyone get logged on and get their audio sorted. We'll be back with you in just a few moments. All right, and without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Shibata, if you're ready, you can take it away.
Hello, everyone. So today we would be discussing evaluations for public health domain, wherein the majority focus would be around the setup for practicum plan and how we can set the practicum plan within Exxat. We would show you a sample setup that we have done for a public health program, and then we would review the reports that we are proposing for the public health domain. Does that sound okay?
Sounds perfect, Shibata.
Okay. Is my presentation visible?
Right now we are still seeing your system, so maybe just check the screen you're sharing or maybe minimize Prism since you do have the live system loaded right now.
Shubda, we are able to see your screen. It's just the live system. Now we are able to see your PowerPoint.
Okay. So yeah, let's get started. Sorry for a little bit of delay. But yeah, like I was saying, today we will be going through a sample evaluation setup for public health, mainly concentrating around the practicum plan. And then we'll look at the reports that we're hoping to build for public health. And then we would have some time reserved for question and answers. So let's get started.
Shubda, can you go in a presentation mode so everyone can see a bigger slide?
Okay, so as I was saying, the two main workflows or the two main forms that we would be reviewing today would be practicum plan and final evaluation of practicum plan. So the practicum plan is something that would be used by the student to define how they are going to, what activities they are going to take up as part of their experience, and those would be they would also be selecting competencies that they're hoping to meet through the experience, and then we would be moving on to final evaluation, which would be used to get the preceptors comments and preceptors overall review of the practicum plan. So we'll start with the workflow for practicum plan. In the practicum plan, the first step would be for the student to fill activities, deliverable, competencies, and then the student would submit the form. As the next step, the form would be sent to faculty or program coordinator, and they would review whatever the student has filled in. Then the form would be sent to the student, and the student basically again sends the form to the preceptor for review and approval. Is this clear so far? Any questions?
Not seeing any questions, Shibata.
Just a quick
Yeah.
point to add. To set up the form also, do you want to cover the process how the schools can get the form
Yeah,
set?
yeah, we'll go through the
Okay,
screens and we'll go from start when we look at the screens. Okay, so let's look at the screens. the system. Let me share. So my browser is visible, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. So currently logged in as one of the school users. So we'll go into the public health setup for Exxat. So over here, you would see a tab for learning activities. So learning activities is what we use to uh, monitor all the evaluations and other activities the student would be doing as part of their as part of their experiences. So if you go to learning activities, what you see is all the courses that have been set up uh, for a particular class. Then against every course, you see something called as setup. So when you get onboarded onto Exxat, you would discuss the kind of setup or the kind of forms you would want your program to use. And so you would be discussing this with your CSS uh, executive, and they would be setting up some of the forms for you with the help of our teams. And all the forms that you have discussed and decided would show up on the screen here. But in the beginning, you would have to let's go to one of the courses where, so for this course we already set up certain forms. Let's go to a course where the setup has not been done. So for example, here, since forms evaluations you don't see it in blue, that means setup has not been done there. So if you go there, so this is the blank canvas, and what you need to do to begin is click on the plus icon and select the form that has been we have set up the questions and everything. It's just that you need to activate the form for the courses. So for example, I want to activate practical plan. So the first bit, you would only select this bit if you are trying to set up a form that does not require a placement. uh, so otherwise this would be set no. If the form contributes to student score, if not, you set as no. For now we'll set both the things as no. And publish date is something that decides when the student starts seeing the form on their screens. So if I say one day before placement start date, then they will start seeing it a day prior to the placement start date. We also have something we also have a due date way to set up a due date. So due dates today are not enforced on the student, meaning they are not the form doesn't become inactive for them post the due date, but this is something, a date that shows up to the student so that they know the timeline by which they are expected to submit the form. So I might say I want to set the due date as one day after placement end date. You see there is a bit called active. This becomes turned on by default, and you just need to make sure this is turned on and not in this kind of an inactive state. You turn this on and then you click on save. Okay. So once you have set up all the types of forms that you want to activate for your program, and then do student placements, the students start seeing the forms. So for a student, let's look at what the student sees when they log in. Okay. So here I have logged into a mock student account. The student would, this is their dashboard. As soon as they log in, this is the screen that they see. They would need to go to the coursework page. It lists out all the placements that have happened for the student here. And once they enter into it, these are all the forms that have been set up for the course HSMP 408PE. And this is what they have to, get started upon. So these are all the forms, and you see the due dates, you see the status of every form. Since the student hasn't yet started filling up anything, all the forms you see in the get started state. Okay. So let me also show you something on the school end. Once the forms have been activated, what do you see on the school end? So let's go back to the dashboard. You can go to learning activities. And this time around, let's look at, you would need to click on forms evaluations from here. So this is something that we call evaluation summary page. What this page does is it gives you an overview of all the forms that have been activated for the course and the status for every student for every form. So we'll go through the workflows for some of these forms today. But as you can see, for student John Charles, all the forms have been filled and have been reviewed by the school already. So at least 3 of the forms have been reviewed. Okay. The school can also look at what has been filled by the student by clicking on the status tag for every form, and they can see what is happening with the particular form. Okay. So these are the basic screens, what the student sees, what the school sees. But now let's take a look at a practicum plan form. So let's first see the form itself. So this is what the form looks like. You can make certain changes to the form as per the requirements of your program, but this is what we are proposing as of now as a ideal setup, but you may change as per your program's requirements. So what we have done is we have added certain activities that the student would need to add against. So for every activity, they need to describe the activity itself. They would also describe the deliverable or the product that they are expecting at the end of the activity. They would also select certain foundational competencies that have been set by CEPH. So they may select you know, competencies from here, and then you could have certain competencies that are specific to your program, and that can be set up here. Okay. The student can also add narrative. Similarly, program director can add narratives. So that's and that is repeated for every activity that the student can add. So that's the structure of the form. But we'll now go through the workflow, meaning what exactly happens in the real world. When does the student fill the form, and when how does the preceptor as well as the directors, how do they review the form? Let's go through that workflow. Before that, Rosha, are there any questions?
Not seeing any questions, Shibida.
Okay. Okay, so let's look at the practicum plan, and let's go to the student screen. Since currently the practicum plan is open for the student. So let's see how they would fill this up. So I have switched back to the student login. I'm into my practice experience, and let me open the practical plan. So I would fill up some activity description. I'll select the competencies. I will add narrative. So for this particular setup, what has been set is they need to add minimum 2 activities, and that is why you can see there is a red asterisk for the first 2 activities. But after that, there is no red asterisk, meaning the student can skip those activities and proceed. You can customize this again, like I said, per your program needs. If you need students to add more than 2 activities, it can be set up like that. uh, or if you need less than, or if you need them to add just 1 activities, that can also be set up. So student can at this point either save this form and come back to it later. In that case, the form will, or whatever the student has filled in, will not yet be visible to either the preceptor or the school at this time. Whatever progress or whatever values the student is filling into the form are only visible to the student. So once student is ready for the review of the form, they would click on submit. Okay. And now you can see the form status changes to pending school review. Okay. So now from this point onwards, the student's form is visible to the school. I'm back into school login now. So we're logged into mock student, so you can see the status for practicum plan changing to pending school review. So for any of the get started forms, you can see it would only show me empty form. So as long as the student has only saved the form and not submitted, this is what the school keeps on seeing. But for the form where the status is pending school review, if you open that, you're going to see what the student has filled in. Okay. So I am, since I'm logged in as a school, I'm also seeing a practicum director narrative. So I can add my own narratives. So once I have looked at how the student has filled in his form, and I'm okay with this, I can select a reviewed option. Or else, if I see that the student needs to make certain changes and this is not yet ready, I could select unsubmit to student. If I select unsubmit to student, the form goes back to the student and student will need to make changes to the form. But if I say reviewed, okay, now for me as a practicum director, now I cannot make any changes to the form. Refresh the page. the status has changed to pending student review. The form has gone back to the student. Now if I switch my login to student, I can see the status changing here as well. And now I will go into the form. I can see, check all the narratives added by practicum director, uh, review all of the comments, and then I need to select the preceptor who is supposed to do the preceptor review for this form. Click on submit. Okay. So when you click on this, the preceptor receives an email that contains a link to the form. So the email would look something like this. Again, the text of the email can be changed as per your program's needs. The logos could be changed to your programs or your university's logos. But the preceptor would basically receive a link that they can click on. And once they click on the link, they see the form that has been filled by the student. They can make changes to uh, the competencies that the student has entered or any of the other uh, either the activities or deliverables. If they need, they can make changes to that, and they need to add the narrative for each of the activities. Okay. So once they have reviewed everything, they would also click on submit. Of course, they also have an option to save. So in case if they only click on save and not click on submit, that means the changes that have been done by them are not yet visible to the student or to the school. So if they just want to keep on working on a form, they could just click on save and come back to this form by clicking on the same link from the email that was earlier sent to them. Uh, if they click if they click on save and then click on the link again, the form would preserve the progress that they had made on the form previously. And once they are satisfied with whatever has been filled, they can click on submit. Okay. Now if I go back to again logged in as a school, and you can see the workflow has completed and now the form is marked as reviewed. So this is the initial practicum plan that has been submitted by the student. So you can imagine that the student would fill this up right as they start their experience or right before they start the experience, and get the initial review done by both the practicum director as well as by the preceptor. Roshu, any questions? Do we see any questions?
No, Shubhita, no questions so far.
Shubda,
Okay.
I do have one question. Uh, can you
Mhm.
talk about when the students are selecting the preceptor, preceptor, who are the preceptors? Are they able to add, or are those preceptors assigned by the school?
Yeah, so there are two ways or two types of preceptors show up to the student. Uh, Either the school can assign a preceptor when they are doing the placement, or you can see on the, if I go to the student screen again, I do have an option to add a preceptor here. So either they can add the preceptor from right from here, or while they are filling up the form and selecting the preceptor to send the form for review, from there as well they can add the preceptor.
And schools can control that, right? If the schools want to just have the students pick from the list of preceptors they have assigned, we can configure that the
Yes,
add button is disabled. Okay, thank you.
yes, yes. Okay. So this is at the start of the uh, experience. Uh, Although we were only going to only look at practicum plan, but just as a recommended setup, some of the schools also do a midpoint attestation. So that is what has been set up over here. So either you could do a midpoint attestation where you just uh, have the student attest to the fact that they have completed certain number of hours, uh, and have them sign off that attestation, or sometimes schools want the students to do a midpoint approval of the practicum plan again, where the students would fill up uh, progress against their practicum plan during the midterm, and get it reviewed again by school and preceptor. So if your program needs that, that can be set up. Over here you can see that we have a midpoint attestation, and after the attestation, at the end of the experience, the student will go on and fill the final evaluation on practicum plan, which is the end of experience review of the practicum plan. So both options are available. You can talk with your CSS and set your stub accordingly. So let's look at the final evaluation here. Okay. So as part of the final evaluation, the student will again, uh, you know, sign off an attestation saying they certify they have completed some hours. So you can set this up as per your program's requirement. If you do not want attestation, if you need changes to the text of attestation, all of those changes can be done. So I, for example, here I attest to the fact that I have completed 120 hours. I would enter activity, the first activity. Mm, let's again. But now the change here is for every activity, I would need to select the status of the activity. Uh, it could be any of either fully completed, partially completed, not completed. So you would report onto that. So as part of the final review, I would also need to uh, upload some proof of work uh, that I have done against the deliverables. So they could attach files and add description and explanation. Okay. So like I was telling you earlier, they could add a preceptor right from here, but the school has control over whether they want to have this add preceptor button available to the student while they're sending the form to the preceptor. So this can be controlled, but if your school does want to give students that option, they could just click on here and add the preceptor's name and email address, and the new preceptor would start showing up on this drop down, and everywhere wherever we are showing the students placement and evaluations information, the preceptor will start showing up. So for now I will continue with what was added earlier. And again, click on submit. Okay, so you can see this has gone into the review. This again sends out an email to the preceptor, just like the one that we saw earlier. So let's open up that email. So here is the email. Again, like I said, you could set up the text of the email, the logos, and you could have two different texts for the, so for example, for the initial form, the email that went out to the preceptor could have a different text, and this email could have a different text. So you can set it up as per your needs. So let me click on the link. So as you can see the name of this form, so the way this has been set up is it does have a final review of the practicum plan, but it also includes preceptor evaluation of student. So these two types of forms, you could either have a setup like this where along with reviewing practicum plan, the preceptor also reviews students performance or evaluates student performance during the experience, uh, or you could set both of them as separate forms. So that can be done as per your program's needs again. So again, the preceptor may review the form, make any changes if they want to what student has described. They could write the comments. They are able to view the files that the student had uploaded as evidence to their deliverables, and review the explanation that was given by the student. They could, let's make the student excellent in all the areas. they may fill up certain questions that might be there. And once they have filled in all the details, again, they could either click on submit or click on save. Let's click on submit. By the way, if either student or the preceptor or anybody in the system, if they do not, if for example there is a red asterisk and they do not fill this up and then click on submit, the system would warn them that they have to finish up all the necessary fields. And again, that is also customizable as per your program needs. Okay. So let's check on the school end. What do we see? You can see the form status has changed, that now school needs to review. If we click on this, so now the school is able to see everything that the preceptor had to say, everything that the student had to say. They could add their own narrative as well. They are also able to view the explanation that the that was filled for the or even view the files that was produced as evidence by the student, and the evaluation that was filled on the student by the preceptor. And at the end of it all, they can either say that they have reviewed the form, or they could send it back to the student, in which case the whole workflow would repeat. Student would have to make changes that the school. So here you can see, for example, if I want to unsubmit to the student, I would also be entering comments in here. If you do that, the form goes back to the student and they are able to view the comments or the reason why the form was returned to them. They can make changes as per what has been written in the comment, and then make changes and submit the form again. Or otherwise, in most other cases, you would just click on reviewed and update. Same is the case on student in. Form status has updated. They could review the final comments that have been made. Okay. So apart from these forms, for this particular setup, we have also set a student's evaluation of clinical experience or site or preceptor. You could again set this up as per your program's needs. We won't go into the details of this form because this is something that you can set up as per your program needs, the questions that you want, or the structure, or even if you do not need it, you could do it as per the program needs. And even the workflow can be set up as per your program needs. But that is also another type of evaluation that the schools generally do set up when they use Exxat. So, Roshu, any questions so far?
All good, Shubhita, no questions.
Okay.
Shubda,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have a question. Shubda, could you throw some light or briefly explain how the experience would be for a faculty who is using a faculty login, either as a course faculty or a placement faculty?
Um, s- Let me. So for them as well, just like the school is able to look at the student, the screens are basically similar to what you see for the school login, Vishaka.
Okay.
So they would also see a grid like this, and they would basically go into the uh, particular form and review the forms.
Okay. And is the experience different if they are tagged as a placement faculty versus if they are a course faculty?
Okay,
Especially for the
get
practicum.
into one of the let me get into one of the faculty logins. Sure.
Okay.
Pausing the screen for a while.
While Shubda is pulling it up, I'd like to hear from the audience. If you want to speak up, if you have any questions, please raise your hands and we'll unmute you. Or feel free to type in your questions in the question box and we'll address those. But we would kind of like to hear from you if the sample that Shubda shared, the workflow, does that make sense to you? Does it work for you, for your domain, for your needs? Not hearing any comments or seeing anything in the question. So Shubda, you can continue your presentation.
Yes. So currently now I'm logged in as a faculty. So this is the dashboard that a faculty would see as soon as they log into Exxat. So as a faculty, I could be playing various roles within the program. So if I'm advising students, I would see them in this advisees box. If I'm assigned a course faculty for some of the courses, or I'm administering some of the courses, I would see those listed here, and all the activities related to that would be done from this particular tab. And if I'm assigned a placement faculty, I see all the student placements here, and then I could perform uh, all my tasks for those placements through this tab. So if we go here, so the current login that I have is unfortunately not for a public health domain, but the experience would be similar. So you can see it lists out all the placements where I have been marked as a placement faculty, and I could review the coursework for each of those placements from here. And if a form is tagged to me, I could go inside the form and make changes to the form. Right now, these forms have not been tagged to the preceptors, so they will only be able to view. So that's for placement faculty. For course faculties, they do get the whole access to the course, so they can get inside the course. They do have the learning activities tab, so they could either review the learning activities. Look at the status and do everything that the regular school login can do for those forms from here. Okay. And if I'm assigned as an advisee, I do not have a capability of making changes to the form, but I do see the students that I have been assigned as an advisor, and then review meaning just look at the status of the forms that the student has filled, or any of the learning activities that the student has completed.
So, Shubda, a follow-up question is, does the
Mhm.
configuration or setup of the form decide whether a placement faculty gets to review a particular form or evaluation or not?
So as of now, it is not driven based on the configuration of form, but we do have certain enhancements that are currently being done. Uh, and so, for example, as of now, what we have been able to do is we have been able to, just like you saw the drop down for preceptor, that the students could select and send out an email that gives them the access to the particular form without having a formal login into Exxat system. So that type of email can be sent out to the faculty. You could create a list of faculty, the placement faculty, and they would receive a link, though that is not connected today with this formal faculty login that Exxat provides. So, but enhancements related to that are in the pipeline as of now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Shubda, one more question from it. What type of notifications can you also like discuss about what type of notifications we can configure for these forms for public health?
Yeah, so the notifications are, for example, you could send a reminder notification. uh, so all of these, so there could be a reminder notification. You could also have certain notifications sent out once either the student submits the form. If you want to notify the faculty or the preceptor, you could do that as well. Or like I said earlier, if you have sent out certain uh, evaluations to either students or preceptors and you want to remind them, then you can set up those reminder emails as well. But today, you would need to do that by contacting Exxat support. Uh, that would not be available uh, from front end for you to change as per your needs, but you could contact Exxat support and they will set it up for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So today we can set up reminders, but that process should be like is driven via a support ticket for the school should raise a support ticket, and then we will be able to set up those notifications.
Yeah.
Okay, Shubda, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Kanti. Okay, I will moving on to reports. I will show you a sample report that can be set up. Just a minute. So to access learning activities report in the system, you could either go to reports from here, in which case it lists out all the reports that are available to you, and you could run those reports for any of the course offerings or any of the forms. So it would list out all the forms. So the report that we are currently into, that is what would be by default available for public health schools as of now, wherein you could, which is called as a raw data report. What this report does is it would show you responses of every student for every question that has been set up for the uh, for the uh, uh, for the particular form. So you could select the form, you would select the rotation. If you want to generate for certain settings, you could do that, or you could leave that empty. And if you want to do it by status, that can be done. And then you would generate the report. This would generate an Excel type of report. Should be like something like this, wherein you would have the name of the student, the term, site name, the details of the activity, the deliverable products, the competencies that have been selected for the student, the narratives and comments that have been added. So this kind of gives you an overall, all of the data related to each of the students' forms, and you could generate it uh, separately for mm, each of the forms that is available in the system. Or you could, the other way to access reports is you can see reports over here as well. So this would directly take you to the reports that are applicable to the particular course, or the filter for the course would be applied by default, and you could just select your forms and then generate the same report. But in this case, you would only get it for the selected courses. Okay. So today we only provide the reports in the form of what all has been filled by the students. But if I have questions for you, if you, any of you have any specific needs related to reporting, do you want to see the data in a particular format or in a particular way, or visualized in a different manner? uh, can we can you give us that input? Does any one of you from the attendees have any specific need related to reports?
Not seeing any questions, Shibata.
Okay, I think we're almost reaching the time as well. But yeah, this is what I wanted to showcase to you all today. Of course, if uh, we didn't receive many questions today, but if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to us either through support channels, or maybe Roshan, you can share the details how they can ask us any follow-up questions, and we would be happy to answer. So that's it from me. Thank you,
For sure.
everyone.
I'll go ahead and post our support email in the chat so folks can have that handy. If oh, 1 second. And we'll share that with everyone here. So you'll have that handy. So if you have any questions, feel free to jot those in the questions section. But it looks like it's been a pretty quiet webinar this time around, which is A-okay. And let's go ahead and let's see, since we are all set, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. So that brings us to the end of this webinar. If you have a few minutes, we'd love to hear from you. Stick around once this webinar ends for a short survey to let us know how we're doing, what can be improved, and any additional topics you'd like to see in the future. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.